So I want to move the conversation to the defense lawyers because he changed lawyers. He had, I think the first lawyer was Kim Cole, and I forgot the other gentleman's name. So the Anthony family, I don't want to say dismissed, but they chose to go with another law firm, and the lead defense attorney is Mike Howard. And I want to play the clip of the defense attorney for the Anthony family, Mike Howard, talking after the bond hearing.
We can't do this in here. 5 more seconds. I'm sorry.
5 more seconds? Okay. Good? Everybody good? Every Texan has the right to defend themselves when they reasonably fear for their life. Self-defense is a protection that applies to each and every one of us. There are two sides to every story, and Karmelo is a 17-year-old kid and an excellent student. He is the captain of his track team. He is the captain of his football team. And prior to this, what was on his mind was what college he was going to go to. This is a tragedy all the way around for both families. Rushing to judgment, trial by public perception and trial by media is not how we ensure justice is done. We are confident that after a full investigation, that the truth will come out. Thank you.
Mike, you took umbrage with the state's assessment that this was simple and brutal. Why so?
Well, the fact of the matter is, like I said, there's two sides to every story, and we've only heard one side. In any criminal case, the police investigate, and the defense is always far behind that. And so it is a one-sided investigation to this point, and even that investigation is still ongoing. So to say that it happened this way or that way is just not accurate at this point. All of the facts are going to come out, and that's why our system of justice requires that we keep our minds open and we let the facts come out as they are after a full investigation.
Is your client going to be able to make bond and get out today?
I anticipate that he will be able to make bond. I can't speak to how quickly that will go. Funds, in the funds that have been raised are not quick to come out. And then, there's obviously a process to the release process once bond is posted.
The big question that a lot of people have is, why was this young man armed on school property?
That's an understandable question, but it's not something that, frankly, we're prepared to even go into. This is something that I know the police and the prosecution want to get it right and want to have a full and fair investigation, and so do we. So it would be irresponsible for me or them at this point to start saying, this is what happened, this is why, anything. So I understand that's a big question. It's going to be a big question, and it's something that we will find out, and we ask that the public, as hard as it is, withhold judgment and let both of these families have justice, that let both of these young men, the Metcalf family and the memory of who they've lost, but also Karmelo, have a fair and full justice process.
Ultimately, you're feeling on the reduction of this bond, you feel it's fair?
I feel it's fair. Bond, as the judge said, is not supposed to be an instrument of oppression. It's not supposed to keep people in jail. It's not supposed to punish. It's supposed to ensure that a person shows up to court, complies with all conditions, and it's supposed to keep the community safe. So this is a large and substantial bond, and the judge has, I think, rightly imposed reasonable conditions that will ensure both Karmelo and the Anthony family's safety, but also the safety of the community.
What was Karmelo's reaction today? He didn't seem very talkative toward you, and how has jail, I guess, been so far for this teenager, and is he like on suicide watch or anything like that?
I honestly can't speak to Karmelo's reaction because I was so focused on the hearing and what was going on and what the judge was saying. I think we have to all remember Karmelo is a 17-year-old kid who's never been in any sort of trouble before. If you can just put yourself in his shoes, this is a scary, bewildering process, and I can't even imagine what was going through his head, just as I'm sure I can't imagine what was going through the heads of the Metcalf family. So this is something that is new to all of them and incredibly trying.
So for people who want to know, why were you selected? I mean, what is your experience? I mean, you had to be really good.
I can't speak as to why I was selected. In any case, it's important to have an attorney that you connect with, that you feel has the right amount of experience and the right investment in the case. And I'm not speaking to anybody else. I just know that that's important in any case.
Just how unsafe does this family feel? You mentioned it multiple times.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not going to speak for them at this point, but I think you can imagine the press coverage on this case has been immense, and the online and public reaction has been immense. And unfortunately, as is common in our culture, especially lately, the vitriol and the public reaction, one way or the other, has been intense. And threats and talk of race war and all kinds of insanity isn't good for, obviously, the Anthony family. It's not good for the Metcalf family. It's not good for the peace and safety of our community. So, I would ask, and I know both sides would ask, that the temperature on this be allowed to come down. That the media, you guys have a job to do, and I understand that everyone does. But at the same time, we just ask everyone in the public and everywhere to let this process play out fairly and fully for both sides.
Okay, the defense lawyer was talking a little too much. I think he laid out a problem for himself. I don't know if he realized it. What did he say the boy was captain of?
Either track and football. I think it was both.
It's both. Captain of the track team, captain of the football team. Now, you weigh supposedly too little to defend yourself, so it's a matter of disparate force. Well, if you play offense at his weight, what is he supposed to do when he confronts a defensive tackle, a defensive end, the defensive linebackers who are likely to weigh 200 plus pounds, 240, 250? What's he do? Lay down instead of continuing to run? Okay, if he plays defense and he's one of the defensive backs, which would be commensurate with his weight, what's he supposed to do when the offensive guard, offensive tackle, or the center, or a fullback, or a big running back decides to block him out? Does he just lay down, or does he go toe to toe? See, he defeats his theory that it was such disparate force that he had to use deadly force because he was no way, no how going to be able to defend himself against somebody that big. Every day of the week, 5 days a week of the school week, he's defending himself against people that big. Remember, he's captain of the football team. Every game he plays in on Friday, he's running up against one way, either defense or offense, against big guys like that. So why is he on the football field if he can't match them physically, at least to protect himself? You see, the whole thing washes into, okay, this guy's captain of the football team. That means he's not a bench warmer. He is an active player, so he plays a lot. And he wouldn't play a lot if he wasn't halfway good at what he does. So does the 130, 135, 150 pound offensive back or wide receiver quit because he's got to run up against 240-pound linemen?
So
Or does
basically, so
back quit because he's got to do that against offensive line?
okay, so basically, of course, the defense is using self-defense, but the prosecutors can come back and say, well, you have a kid who's captain of the football team and track, but football requires for you to tackle and,
Or block?
block and, excuse me. And a lot of times your opponent is going to be bigger than you. So you're not scared to do that. Why couldn't he just defend himself without a weapon against someone who seemingly is bigger than him?
Yeah. And then you get to the other point. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, if we accept the defense position, that would mean that every single somebody who was getting whipped in a fist fight by a bigger person was entitled to pull out a knife or a gun or a club and use deadly force against the person he was fighting with. It doesn't work that way.
Mhm.
That becomes the comeback. So they're treading on very dangerous grounds, and they might wind up having to say this guy was fearful, so he was a punk. He was a good athlete, but he punked out when it came to the man-on-man thing, so he stabbed somebody in the chest like so many emasculated boys do today when they listen to their mamas or the girls that they hear where they say, I'd cut his heart out, or like some fool did on our X Space. Remember the guy that said, I'd cut his heart out, blah, 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 if anybody did. And then like the other person said, well, how many times, tell the audience how many times you've been to the penitentiary? You see. So
But
that,
you also said that his defense attorney was talking too much at this.
yeah, he talked too much. He should have said no further questions. I think we've answered the essential ones, which at this point have to do with the bond. So defense is conducting its own investigation as well to determine witnesses and statements that the witnesses might make and whether there's any video evidence somebody has on their cell phone. So that's all for today. Thank you very much for your time and consideration, and left it.
I wanna bring this into the fold because that the defense attorney did mention race, and you have a lot of digital content creators, social media personalities who have very large followings, right? And they are the ones that really started this race conversation into this case, which is why a lot of us content creators are talking about it. And this one particular person on X, Matt, let me put it this way. Matt Wallace, he writes, this evil judge deserves to spend the rest of her life in prison for what she did today, talking about reducing Carmelo Anthony's bail, right?
Ridiculous.
Very much ridiculous. And that is the problem that we have, and there have been
Ignoramuses that know nothing about American law, its precepts, its foundation, and what it's trying to achieve. And see, they're off into vendetta, and this is what creates mobs. And today, we have had at least 5 years worth of work up to this point, which makes it very dangerous because the public has been inured to the mob mentality. Once again, we don't need that.
Mhm.
This has nothing to do with race in the first place, from what I've heard so far.
Mhm.
So, wow. Even if that did have something to do with race, it didn't justify what happened.
Right. So, well,
And by the way, it's a see what's getting me is it's a routine case. Why did you kill this man? Well, I didn't mean to kill him. I just stabbed him. Well, why did you stab him? Because I was afraid and I was emotional. That's no excuse. I don't know how many times somebody is sent immediately to my right, which is where they sit in my real courtroom for the state of Tennessee and got elected to 2 8-year terms as a criminal court judge. What I heard. This is a routine case. This happens all the time. usually it's black on black or Hispanic on Hispanic or white on white. Sometimes it bounces around amongst the races where one person is of one race and another part of the
Right.
group involved is of another.
Yeah.
But I don't see a particular race basis for this thing for
Well,
people to be getting upset unless they are just trying to find something to get upset about.
so I brought this to your attention earlier. Dominique Alexandra here, right? He is the advocate for the Anthony family, and he is also the head of this nonprofit organization called New Generation Action Network. But he is linked up with the Jasmine Crockett. He is also linked up with, it's called Next Generation, not new, with BLM.
Chick George.
I think it is a connection with the Action Network with Al Sharpton, but it says here, so the two attorneys that originally the Anthony family hired was attorneys for the Next Generation Action Network Foundation, and that guy Dominic is head of, who is advocating for the family. But now they went with this other lawyer, Mike Howard. I don't know if he's ever been affiliated with this organization, but the previous two were. Also, it says here the New Generation Action Network is a BLM supporting 501c based on full investigation, have brought in six figures, has yet a total of only 2 IRS reports since its inception, 2014. So I'm bringing this into the fold since we're talking about race a little bit, that I think that this person, Dominique, is an Al Sharpton 2.0. You know, is it political yet? No. But a lot of people locally in Texas, like this guy and his organization, and even the DA, they are going to use this case to build up their own resume and notoriety.
Yeah, the DA is elected. It's an interesting job. It pays fairly well for government jobs. So money's hard to come by. Lawyers charge ridiculous fees for the cases they do get. And I say ridiculous. And sometimes it's necessary because they don't have a big volume, because essentially we have too many lawyers for what they do now, and too many of them are essentially inexperienced, even though they've been out of law school for a while. The very good ones are pretty good right from the gate.
Mm-hmm.
And they tend to pick up a number of clients and have a lot of trial experience. And a good criminal trial lawyer is pretty good on his first trial because it's aptitude. But too many don't have that natural aptitude, and they lack what doctors find themselves needing, which is being interns and residents. You see, there's a process of doing that. When you're a lawyer, you go through a DA's office, a government agency, a public defender's office, or public service law firm. And the idea is to get as many trials as you can, so you see what happens when you put theory against the reality of live humans being persuaded or not persuaded by it.
So let me throw this also in here as well, because I noticed when it comes to white media creating this narrative of reverse racism, I've seen Megyn Kelly. I've seen like this particular person on X, Matt Wallace, and others, you know, the Daily Mail, calling Karmelo Anthony, basically painting him as a lifelong criminal, taking away the element of a teenager. Yes, he technically murdered someone. Yes, he did. But just stripping him of any type of fair humanity. And so
it's not their job to make somebody look good. That is something that does not interject itself into a court. So it's unrealistic to assume the press is going to make anybody look like an angel. Historically and currently, the press tends to be against defendants. So it is what it is. And then the other thing is, he talks about he's only 17. That doesn't wash. A whole lot of people, when you talk about 17, start thinking about 15 and 16-year-olds burglarizing their cars, holding up stores, snatching purses. Interestingly enough, when I was on the bench, one of my last two cases involved a 15-year-old charged with multiple murders who was on trial as an adult, and a 16-year-old who was accused of a particularly heinous homicide. Myself, I got a stay of execution from somebody who was 15 years, 2 weeks old on the date of his execution, scheduled execution. And he supposedly killed 3 people when he was in the 7th grade. So, you know, that's the new thing. The gangs and such like, they recruit the 13, 14, 15-year-olds because they tell them you are juveniles. They can't try you as an adult. So they have the young teenagers pull off the hits.
So
And it's becoming a problem. So when you argue 17 years old, you try to say he was only 17, a whole lot of people get the wrong idea. That might not be a fruitful pursuit.
So let me ask you this though, because I agree with you. You know, the press have always not taken the side of the defense, or create like a negative narrative. So do you think that the defense may ask for a change of venue?
They might, and whether they get it, I don't know. So far, it's been pretty fair. The DA has been very restrained, unlike Miss Fanny down in Fulton
Oh,
County.
we did not forget about her. We're going to be talking about her for the
Yeah, but see, this DA is moderate, so I haven't heard anything that would prejudice the jury yet.
Mhm.
And the only thing that's coming out is the press. So, I mean, it's going to depend on what the jury pool looks like. Is it reasonably representative of the local population or of the district wherein it is found?
Mhm.
I'm sure the DA is not going to exclude anybody just because they're black and evoke a Batson situation, which is you can't exclude somebody because of their race, color, national origin, religion, sex, age, or condition of infirmity, unless the infirmity is such that they would not be able to properly assess and evaluate witnesses.